Good afternoon and welcome to the Sustainable Materials Management Webinar Series, a joint effort between the National Recycling Coalition and the Pennsylvania Recycling Market Center. My name is Wayne Bowen and I'm the Program Manager for the Recycling Market Center, and I will serve as your moderator today. We would like to extend a special thanks to Bob Hollis of the Mobius Network for providing the webinar management software for this series, and Lisa Ruggiero of the National Recycling Coalition for providing technical support. Today's webinar focuses on zero waste. During and after the presentation, we will field questions from the audience. If you have a question or comment, please use the GoToWebinar dialog box located in the control panel on your screen. You may also use the dialog box to request assistance if you are experiencing technical difficulties during the webinar. Please note that an edited version of this webinar will be made available for viewing on YouTube links on the National Recycling Coalition and Pennsylvania Recycling Market Center websites. And now I'd like to introduce our presenter. Gary Liss is president of the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council and a leading advocate of zero waste. He has helped more communities develop zero waste plans than anyone else in the United States. He chairs the certification committee of the Zero Waste International Alliance, is vice president of the Grassroots Recycling Network, and was a founder, past president, and now serves on the board of the National Recycling Coalition. He is currently working on a zero waste plan for Fort Collins, Colorado, and an electronic guide and tool for zero waste community planning for the US EPA. He has over 40 years of experience in the solid waste and recycling field. He served on his hometown's council and was mayor in 2010. And now I'd like to hand the program over to Gary.
Thanks a lot, Wayne, and sorry for the startup challenges. We're going to be talking about the zero waste brand today. What is it and who certifies it? And I'd like to highlight that there's lots of descriptions of what the zero waste message is. This is a diagram from EcoCycle that they developed in 2005 that is particularly useful in highlighting the zero waste economy. There's many different ideas out there of what zero waste is, but the brand that the worldwide environmental, recycling, and zero waste leaders have focused on is that of the Zero Waste International Alliance, which can be found at ZWIA.org and look up standards. The Zero Waste International Alliance was founded 2002, 2003 to set standards for the world on what zero waste means, recognizing that as this moves forward, we needed to have a consensus about what we're trying to achieve through zero waste. And the organization developed its first definition of zero waste in 2004, zero waste business principles in 2005, and then revised the definition and adopted zero waste community principles in 2009. So the Zero Waste International Alliance has been around for over a decade, establishing the brand of what zero waste means that's recognized by the worldwide environmental, recycling, and zero waste leaders. The definition of zero waste that's shown on the screen is the latest definition from ZWIA. It has three key components: that all discarded materials are designed to become resources for others to use. We don't want to burn or bury those resources. And by definition, our goal is to eliminate all discharges to land, water, or air. And that's a formal definition, and that is essentially our touchstone for the worldwide zero waste movement. That's summarized by the phrase, no burn, no bury, no emissions. And as you can see in the photo, that's a sign that's carried proudly at different events with the tagline, reduce, reuse, recycle, redesign, is on this particular poster. I like to say this, the short form of this is it's all about reduce, reuse, recycle, the 3 R's. But the problem of the past 20, 30 years is we focused on the recycle part of it and not on the reduce and reuse. So to get to zero waste, focusing on reducing and reusing first, then recycling, composting, digesting, and redesigning the rest. There's many helping to get the attention of businesses and communities to move forward with zero waste. It's, all zero waste businesses we've documented have saved money, reduced liability, increased their efficiency, reduced their greenhouse gas emissions, provide a marketing edge for them and advertising. It's the right thing to do, and it reduces litter to oceans and watersheds, which is increasingly of concern throughout the world. For communities, zero waste programs are some of the fastest and most cost-effective ways that local governments can contribute to reducing climate change, creating green jobs, promoting local sustainability, assisting local businesses, promoting local food and nutrients back to the soil, and protecting the health of residents. So those are what's pushing everyone forward, and in fact what we have seen in the last 2 to 3 years, there's been a groundswell of support for zero waste being the key message that everyone is striving for around the world. We've been promoting zero waste since the mid-1990s, and it's just in the last year or two that it's really becoming consensus that zero waste is what we're all about worldwide for the solid waste recycling leaders of every stripe and background. But zero waste is being defined in different ways, and that's why certification is a critical part of moving zero waste forward to the next level. Zero waste is the missing link in green certification. There's lots of great certification programs out there for all sorts of green and sustainability standards, but zero waste is the next step for businesses and communities that are trying to address those types of drivers we just discussed. From a business perspective, there's a huge market potential here. This is an example of a study done in 2008 that found that 71% of firms wanted to improve their brand strength and goodwill through environmental sustainability. And that's the key target market that certification programs are all working to address. Why are we looking at certification? There's a number of really important points. First and foremost in my mind is to maintain the value of the phrase zero waste. Zero waste is a concept, it is a vision, it is an economy, a way of looking at things that is highly principled and a high standard of excellence. It is something that has been embraced by the worldwide environmental, recycling, and zero waste leaders and all those that work with them. This is the ultimate in the green credential. So for zero waste to maintain its value, it needs to maintain the support of environmental leaders. If the environmental leadership is not behind it and the term gets watered down to mean things other than what the ZWIA definition has been developed to promote, it will reduce the value of the phrase zero waste dramatically. And if it is including burning and burying, which some have tried to include as what they mean by zero waste, the term will lose its value and meaningless. Wayne mentioned them working with the US EPA on a guide and tools for zero waste planning. In one of the workshops we had by phone, a phone discussion with a number of interest groups throughout the New England area, one of the things that people highlighted was whenever they get into a meeting and are talking about zero waste, they go around the room and say, what do you mean by zero waste? What do you mean by zero waste? And we're at the stage where the term has gained great traction and great support, but we need to lock it in as to what it means, and that's what the certification programs are aiming to do. Why is that important? Well, for business, they want protection against claims of fraud. The Federal Trade Commission Green Marketing Guidelines is the touchstone for that they have highlighted. Both ULE and NSF in meetings in March highlighted that was a major driver for businesses that they work with, that when they put the word out there that they're a zero waste business, they want to make sure that no one complains to the FTC or takes further actions to say that it's a fraudulent claim. So third-party certification or verification or validation is an attempt to have a business say, we're not the ones claiming it, it's these other groups who are saying, this is a standard and we meet that standard. That's how we're working to protect the brand of zero waste from inappropriate use. And what we're starting to see around the world, just in the last couple of weeks, zero waste advocates are starting to counter false claims in the media and highlighting areas where there have been problems, such as the Russian Olympics just were highlighted as having committed to zero waste, but illegally dumping C&D debris around that area. That's the type of problems that zero waste advocates are saying is not acceptable and are getting increasingly vocal to counter people that are raising false claims. This is a point of credibility. Zero waste embodies the best practices that can be done for all different types of practical issues that come up with dealing with materials that are discarded. And it's highlighting a high bar. That's what zero waste is about. It's not about integrated waste management. It's not about pollution prevention. Zero waste is a higher bar than those for discarded materials. And that's what was intended to set up to be a challenging goal. It's not a least common denominator type of approach. This is meant to be championing the highest and best uses of resources. And what we find is when the businesses embrace that, they save the most money, they save the most through waste reduction, designing wastefulness out of their system. They save the next most through reuse systems like reusable shipping containers and returnable pallets. And then they save some from recycling, composting, digesting, if the rates charged for those services are appropriately structured by the hauler and or the community. The Solid Waste Association of North America, SWANA, has been a leader in the last couple of years with their Road to Zero Waste conferences. And in these conferences, they've discussed what does zero waste mean. And John Skinner, their executive director, had discussions with Eric Lombardi early on after their first Road to Zero Waste conference in Los Angeles a couple of years ago, where Eric highlighted that zero waste to landfill or burning are not what zero waste is all about. John has said that they have members that support zero waste, and they have members that support what he calls waste to energy, and SWANA wants to support all their members. So he's stated that he would not call waste to energy zero waste. And so for those that want to proceed with waste to energy, that's a whole different issue than we're talking about today. Today we're talking about what is zero waste. Waste to energy is not zero waste. So who certifies as zero waste? There's a number of organizations that have come forward just in the last couple of years. Interestingly, you'll see on my next couple of slides that a number of those groups adopted or launched their programs in early to mid 2012. which meant they were all working on them in 2011 and before. So again, it's just in the last couple of years that all of this has taken form and shape. The Zero Waste International Alliance is the one that we highlighted is the brand, and they recognized that there was a need for setting up a recognition program, and I'll have a number of slides highlighting what that program's about. ZWIA works through national affiliates, and in the U.S., its national affiliate is the Grassroots Recycling Network, GRRN, and there are 3 other affiliates that have been formally recognized: Zero Waste Australia, Zero Waste Brazil, Zero Waste Canada, the ABCs of the national affiliates of ZWIA. In this country, we have the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council was formed, again, about 2 years ago to develop third-party certification of zero waste businesses based on the ZWIA approach. UL Environment, Underwriter Labs Environment Group, has developed their program. NSF ISR has developed a program. Green Circle Certified, a member of the Pennsylvania Recycling Market Center, highlighted their program on a separate webinar earlier this year on this webinar series. And ANSI and ASTM are both working on developing recognition, certification type of systems and standards. For ZWIA, ZWIA early on in 2005 developed the zero waste business principles. The primary one that everyone has focused on is number 3, zero waste to landfill and incineration. And that's where the 90% standard that we'll talk about some more was written and included. But all these other principles are what we suggested at Zero Waste International Alliance be used as guidance to businesses. If you're looking to do the right thing, these are the right things to do for a variety of issues that are related to zero waste. So although the primary emphasis to date has been on zero waste to landfill or incineration, all of these are goals that businesses could and should be striving towards over the long term. The ZWIA Zero Waste Business Recognition Program was adopted in January of 2012 to recognize businesses that have a zero waste goal and have reduced their waste to landfill, incineration, or the environment by 90% or more for a facility, a geographic area, or corporate-wide. A couple of key points there. In the 90% or more, the goal of ZWIA is zero air, water, and land emissions and no burn or bury. The measure of performance towards that goal is embodied in the zero waste business principles and included in this recognition program, that 90% standard. The idea of doing it for a facility, a geographic area, or corporate-wide was because the ZWIA Zero Waste Business Recognition Program was envisioned to be a desk audit type of system where a spreadsheet would be provided, details would be gone over between reviewers and the companies, and then once it was confirmed that from what they supplied as their information that was accurate, they would be recognized as a zero waste business. The certification programs have gone to the next step and added in third-party review, on-site audits of the businesses, and that's the difference between recognition and the certification. In the certification area, at least for U.S. Zero Waste Business Council as an example, they're doing it on a facility-by-facility basis because you have to go out and actually audit the facility to see what their operations are doing. As part of the reference to landfill incineration or the environment, I wanted to clarify that in the Zero Waste Business Principle 3, it says that facilities that operate above ambient biological temperatures more than 200 degrees Fahrenheit is what is meant by incineration. So another way we describe that is any thermal process versus a biological process is what is of most concern. Topic for another day, or perhaps in questions, is why the line was drawn there. But there were lots of reasons for that, and the clear line is thermal systems are what Zero Waste International Alliances say is not part of zero waste. For the Zero Waste Business Recognition Program, as we established 4 different levels. At first, they were talking about doing it by 90 to 93%, 94 to 96%, different levels of numerical attributes of diversion from landfills and incinerators to distinguish different levels of performance. But as it was discussed internationally, what the Certification Committee and then the ZWIA Board of Directors felt was most important was being clear that the higher standards were getting into where there was no burn, which was the second level of performance. The third level is that no burn and the residues that come from remaining discarded materials are pre-processed before double-lined landfills that meet European Union standards or equivalent. As far as we know, there are no landfills in this country, in the U.S., that meet those standards, but that doesn't mean that systems can't be set up like have been done elsewhere, like in Halifax in North America. They basically set up that type of approach. So that's why the equivalent is mentioned there. The highest level would be no burn, no bury of 100% of all discarded materials. So the business recognition program was trying to highlight the priorities. First is the 90%, we call it zero waste or darn close in our presentations. It means you can't get to 90% without doing most of the right stuff. If you are just recycling and maybe composting or digesting, but not focusing on reducing and reusing, for most businesses you won't get to 90%. If you're not totally involving with total participation, training, and working upstream with vendors and service providers, you probably won't get to the 90%. So the 90% is a really special high standard that we believe businesses that are achieving that are committed to doing the right stuff and should be recognized for that. As I mentioned earlier, ZWIA has national affiliates for its business recognition program, nonprofit and non-governmental organizations with a national focus that have officially adopted the ZWIA zero waste definition and principles, are authorized to recognize businesses in their country that meet this ZWIA definition. So this is basically a federation approach where the international ZWIA sets the standards and then it's implemented at the national level. And the intent of the recognition program was that in each country it would sunset once there was a third-party certification program established and affiliated with ZWIA. In this country, GRN is the U.S. national affiliate. There's application materials there. Currently, GRN is working through the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council for doing the certifications through them. The U.S. Zero Waste Business Council was created to create a solid foundation that advances the integrity and credibility of zero waste. Again, that's what's going to maintain the value of what zero waste means. If we don't all get behind the ZWIA definition of what zero waste means, we will have destroyed 15 to 20 years of effort to build consensus around the world about the importance of what zero waste means. So we're at a threshold right now of either achieving that as a clear message with integrity and credibility, or we'll be on the verge of making it meaningless. That's where we're at this moment in time. The U.S. Zero Waste Business Council certification supports the ZWIA definition of no waste to landfill incineration in the environment and drives the development of new markets and new ideas towards the zero waste economy shown on our first slide. It meets the requests that we've gotten from zero waste businesses for comprehensive third-party certification and focuses on upstream policies and practices going beyond just diversion and recycling, and emphasizes strong total participation and training of all employees and relationships with vendors, customers, and service providers in order to get the maximum value and the highest and best use of resources. Whole Foods Market was the first to be certified by the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council in March of this year. They got certified under a preliminary program which USZWBC called their bronze certification, that was based directly on the ZWIA and GRN Zero Waste Business Recognition Program, but added in the on-site audit to make it a certification. And that was done for 3 stores in San Diego County, La Jolla, Hillcrest, and Encinitas. You can see Kelly Fulton from the La Jolla market there in the photo. They achieved 93% diversion and was the first in the world to be certified according to the ZWIA standards. Just this summer, after 6 months of intensive effort, the Zero Waste Business Council developed its comprehensive point system. Sue Beets Atkinson is the chair of the certification committee of the Zero Waste Business Council with SBM Management, who put that together with an incredible team of business advisors. I'll show you in a few minutes who was on that. And the bottom line came following the LEED program of the U.S. Green Building Council, developed categories for credits and points for the different credits that all totaled to 80 with bronze, silver, gold, and platinum, different ranges. And the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council whole platform is following the great experience with LEED and U.S. Green Building Council. We thank them for their leadership in the building arena, and the systems that they've set up are what we're trying to set up to follow for this particular topic area. As you can see, the types of categories have the 3 R's in it, but also have redesign and zero waste reporting, purchasing, leadership, training, analysis of the discard stream, upstream management, hazardous waste prevention, closed loop systems, and some extra points for innovation. It's a robust first draft that's now being implemented. The program will likely be improved over time, but we're really proud that we've put out there a really solid product that accomplishes the comprehensive approach that we've been talking about throughout this webinar. Here's the list of the Certification Development Committee, primarily board members and staff of the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council, and the Business Advisory Board that contributed to putting that comprehensive program together. We had representatives from businesses, small, large, across the country, different types and different things from brewing companies to delivery services, grocers, all different types of businesses involved, automobile companies, to really give us a hard look at what we're striving for, and to be a touchstone as being real world practices, practicality, And the program was designed to make sure that overall businesses that follow the credits and adhere to the system will save money. That was a major goal as we refined the program, was to make sure that overall, if people meet the standards, they will save money. For contacting U.S. Zero Waste Business Council, our founder and executive director is Stephanie Barger. USZWBC.org is the website, and she'll be happy to answer more questions about that. Some of the other players that are certifying, validating, verifying for zero waste are going to be highlighted next. UL Environment was a firm that we first learned about in May of 2012. They have a environmental claims validation procedure 2799 for zero waste to landfill. Interestingly, they distinguish between zero waste as being 100%, virtually zero waste as 98 to 99%, and 80 to 97%. They asked for businesses to be transparent about what percent went to landfill versus incineration. And you'll see some common threads in the different programs. They have decided to deal with some of the issues in different ways, but many have dealt with very similar issues. You'll see that this was adopted in May of 2012 and revised in August 2012 to include a cap on combustion facilities. NSF-ISR does a verification for landfill-free name for less than 1% of process waste to landfills on a continual basis, is what they describe on their website as being de minimis. So it's landfill-free if less than 1% of the process waste goes to landfill on a continual basis. They do count incineration as diversion if energy is recovered and residue is used in an environmentally sustainable way, is the way they describe it. And interestingly, they don't include C&D or packaging of their finished product. And that was adopted in March of 2012. Again, that similar time frame was a very productive time for development of these new programs. The next one is Green Circle Certified. We learned of them through this webinar series back in July of this year, I believe, is when they had the webinar on the National Recycling Coalition and Pennsylvania Recycling Market Center webinar. And their program is to validate and certify zero waste or a percentage of waste a company or manufacturing facility diverts from landfill, according to their website. One of the key factors that varies by the different programs is how they address burning. We've talked about it briefly. This chart is intended to show side by side the differences, because it is a substantial difference that exists. The U.S. Zero Waste Business Council follows the ZWIA guidelines that no more than 10% be burned for the lowest level of recognition, and the other three levels of recognition say no burn. In the Zero Waste Business Recognition Program of ZWIA, it calls for annually to be updated, and that businesses that aren't at no burn and aren't at 100% should commit to continuously improve their diversion or reduce the amount of materials going to landfills and incineration, or continuously improve by meeting some of the other zero waste business principles of ZWIA. UL Environment, in their revision, capped combustion at 10%, but allowed for businesses to justify more for particular situations, basically on a life cycle analysis approach. So that introduced another idea there. NSF doesn't have a cap. It basically counts burning on an unlimited basis, as far as we understand it. And Green Circle Certified counts it as an unlimited basis, but they add the idea of it's unlimited for, quote, non-recyclable or, quote, not economically recoverable materials. That is trying to get at something that would define the streams coming in, the feedstocks for processing, which is an important concept that they introduced into the mix. I need to take a minute to thank UL Underwriter Labs for sponsoring this establishment of an ANSI standard, American National Standards Institute. UL has hosted and staffed the development of a standards technical panel to develop an ANSI standard for zero waste. So far, that group has come up with 3 categories of a zero waste standard, being landfill free, landfill and incinerator free, and net zero waste, building on the concepts coming out of the Department of Defense, where the net zero energy, water, and waste is being piloted at different defense establishments, facilities around the country. I'm on the Standards Technical Panel for ANSI, representing the ZWIA Certification Committee, and it's been an incredible experience trying to collaborate and harmonize the different programs that are out there. What I've learned through that process is that this is not unique to standard setting, that at a moment in time in the history of new technology, new systems, multiple places come up with the same or similar ideas at the same time, and then through a standard setting process like this is when, by having it be open, collaborative, science-based, and communicating a lot, the desire is to get a standard that all the programs that are out there could certify to that standard, or validate or verify to that standard. So the development of an ANSI standard would be a major accomplishment for the country and the world. I'm very hopeful that that will be done in good time with the great support provided by Underwriter Labs. ASTM, the American Society of Testing and Materials, also has a committee E60 on sustainability, and they've been researching zero waste issues as well. I'm not as familiar with that process. I'm not participating in it, but I am aware of it and wanted to highlight that. So with that, I think it would be a good time to take a few questions if you want to start on those, Wayne.
Okay, Gary, we have a few.
Great.
First question is, how do GRRN and Zero Waste Business Council processes and standards differ?
The GRN basically is exactly like I described for the ZWIA Business Recognition Program. So it's a recognition program. It's a desk audit, meaning there's no physical going out in the field and looking at the facilities. And it's designed for reviewing data, spreadsheet information. There's forms at grrn.org website that highlight that. The recognition program was intended to be the first step at getting towards this whole idea of certification, to make it easier for getting something up and running, because we knew it was going to take a bunch of effort to get a real solid certification program running. and that's turned out to be true. For U.S. Zero Waste Business Council, they use the GRN ZWIA process and forms for the initial bronze level certification of Whole Foods markets. So that system was what was used. Now, U.S. Zero Waste Business Council has developed and adopted its comprehensive point system, which I showed with the 80 points for the different credit areas. So now the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council is offering the certification through that comprehensive point system. It is continuing to work with Whole Foods markets on bronze certifications of a number of its facilities, but it's in transition to that point system.
Okay, this question is concerning the ambient temperature reaching 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Does this occur in composting and AD facilities?
No. The composting PFRP pathogen reduction programs are geared to 140 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit are the temperatures that are targeted in PFRP, and the anaerobic digestion, again, is operating at biological temperatures. The bugs and bacteria that work in both the anaerobic digestion and in composting are just like us. They don't like it too hot, and they like lots of water and food, and they'll produce and do their job if it's kept at those levels.
Okay, is waste oil burning for heat an acceptable management option under zero waste?
I would say it's certainly not our intent to have waste oil burning as considered part of zero waste, but that would be something that would need to be vetted through our certification committee.
This is a comment and a question. The comment is that baseline measurements can be rigged, and how is this handled during the certification process?
Okay, to date, what we've been doing is operating essentially on a current year basis, not baseline approach. I think the baseline versus current year is going to be an issue that in future versions of recognition and certification we need to address. But the current year is essentially what we're doing. So we go in and we look at what is generated, what's going to landfill, what's going to burning, what's going to reuse, recycling, composting, digestion, and just run the numbers and do the calculation based on the current operations.
This question comes from a representative from a company called usedcardboardboxes.com, who buy used boxes from manufacturing plants for reuse, and they help companies reduce their waste as they move to zero waste.
Hi, Marty.
Yeah, the question is, do reusable plastic pallets, boxes, and sheets that are sent back to the vendor count towards the total weight of the waste?
Yes, reuse is probably one of the areas we've had our most lively discussions about in the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council. It's an area that we need to have some good standards and definitions. A lot of zero waste businesses have not been counting reuse because they didn't know how to do it. Toyota did a great job on a webinar that U.S. Zero Waste Business Council did this past summer, highlighting how they approach reusable shipping containers and returnable pallets. You need to get into calculating the average use that is expected or obtained. Toyota highlighted that they got for when they first started the program, they got from manufacturers their specs on how long a pallet would last, for example, and then over time they modified how much the manufacturer estimated to what their actual results were, and then they threw that into the calculation to figure out how much to attribute that weight towards their goals. But it does get pretty interesting on how to make those decisions. And for some businesses, it could have a huge impact. It could mean the difference between being at a 60% recycling rate versus 90%. So it is a very important issue, and certainly reuse should count in the diversion equation. We're hopeful that U.S. Zero Waste Business Council guidance will help people see how to do that. In addition, through the ANSI process, I'm hopeful that we'll begin to talk through what those standards might be for how to calculate reuse in general.
This question asks if there is a possibility of recognition at lower levels of diversion, 50%, 70%, for example, as the businesses move towards 90%. And the comment is this would encourage them to keep improving.
Exactly. That's on the boards as part of the next steps. U.S. Zero Waste Business Council has been talking about wanting to do that. So we believe that the most important thing is adopting the goal. Once you've adopted the goal as a business, then everyone starts working towards it and tries to figure out how to get there. So we need to have a system that either recognizes, validates, verifies, or certifies where they're at. At ANSI, we've talked about that a little bit as well, and the idea of transparency, I think, is a really important message that's come through in those discussions. So if someone's at, say, 50% landfill free, but 50% goes to burning, if they're transparent and say, we've got a zero waste goal and we're currently at 50%, but the rest we send to a burner, transparency is an important thing. Again, what we're trying to do is have credibility and integrity. That's the most important thing in this whole system. So recognition at the lower levels is definitely coming soon, and we want to encourage all those businesses to join the Zero Waste Business Council, come to the conference, because you'll rub up against all the businesses that are on their way to zero waste and learn a lot and get a lot of benefit there.
In the categories grid, what does diversion mean? Reuse, compost, and recycling have their own categories.
In the diversion grid you're talking about for the USZWBC, it's giving, there's a minimum 90% that is required to be part of the system per the ZWIA, but then you get extra points up to 5 points for, I think it's like 90 to 92, 93 to 94, along the lines I mentioned ZWIA had thought about. So there are extra points for extra diversion above 90%. So businesses that are doing better and better can get bonus points for increasing their rating of their operations. I would also highlight here, while we're on this slide again, for reuse, there's a lot of points there, 7 points, and so even on top of how reuse should count in the diversion counting, there's a number of ways that this program has highlighted extra points for reuse in order to give extra benefit and higher ratings to people that are embracing focusing first on reducing and reusing. And that's the whole point of this point system. It enables you to go beyond just the diversion counting and give extra credit for all the things that we think are needed to have a real change, a sea change, a culture change in businesses to move them to the next levels of zero waste. Well, why don't we go on to the last part of the presentation, if that's okay, Wayne?
Yes, that's fine.
Great. So with those as background of what we're striving for and who's doing it, I just wanted to highlight a couple of other key points that are really going to be critical to protecting the brand of zero waste. The most important one is formally adopted in the ZWIA zero waste definition. Any of you that are on this call, if you haven't adopted the ZWIA zero waste definition, I urge you to do so, either at your business, in your community, in your state or federal agency. The sooner we clarify that there is only one zero waste definition in the world that we all understand when we're talking about it, the sooner we can get on with doing our own particular business of how we implement those standards. But we're in this type of situation where within a year or two, this definition is either going to be meaningful or meaningless. And I urge you that now is the time to adopt it wherever you can. To give additional guidance, the Zero Waste International Alliance developed a zero waste hierarchy of highest and best use, which is also a tool to protect the brand, which I'll highlight momentarily. Working on this certification and recognition for both businesses and communities is important. Communities will be one of the next things ZWIA works on through its certification committee to develop a recognition program for communities. And there are communities out there that would like to be recognized as zero waste communities. Email me so we can get you in the loop and helping to develop that program. And then training programs are going to be a critical part of protecting the brand. Once we all get on the same page, use training programs to do that, we'll be able to have the type of dramatic progress that we've seen happen with the green building with the leadership of the U.S. Green Building Council. So what we're talking about is adopting the definition in federal and state agency rules, regulations, publications, in business and community zero waste plans, and sustainability or climate change plans, wherever you can, and include ideally a goal of zero waste, a definition for that, and some details on what are the next steps for any of these situations. Example of that is the US EPA asked for input on the some of their definitions and standards back in 2011, and what Timothy Hood reported in March of this year from EPA Region 9 was there was strong support for updating the definitions that EPA uses, and that the most comments of all that they received on any topic was on the definition of zero waste. They received over 40 comments on that. Basically, those which were stimulated by the Grassroots Recycling Network, asking EPA to adopt the ZWIA definition of zero waste, and highlighting that that's the single most important action that EPA could take without any costs involved to help foster this bold new way to manage resources. Different cities have adopted the ZWIA zero waste definition in their zero waste community plans. These are some examples of those. There may be others out there. If you know of any, please email me so I can add them to future lists. The zero waste hierarchy of highest and best uses. Our colleagues in Canada were particularly concerned about trying to get something together that would counter the use of the pollution prevention hierarchy in British Columbia, where it's being used to essentially promote incineration as part of zero waste, which, as you see, runs totally counter to the international movement that we've worked so hard for 15, 20 years to build. So this hierarchy of highest and best uses is a summary of a detailed document that is at ZWIA.org/standards that goes into detail and highlights in order of priority things that should be done in making technical selections for how you use the highest and best uses of resources. ZWIA has also developed global principles for zero waste communities, which will be the touchstone for a communities recognition program, and those again are at ZWIA.org/standards. The last certification program that I wanted to highlight is the training arena. The Recycling Organizations of North America set up the National Standards Certification Board to develop a standard for state-based training programs and professionals, and that was in response to state-based programs that wanted to have some reciprocity among each other with national training programs, and so that someone trained in one state could move to another and have a good understanding of the basic issues, although they would still need to be recertified in some of the aspects of their particular state. Just this summer, the standards were set and adopted by that National Standards Certification Board for sustainable resource management with the tagline, reduce, reuse, recycle to zero waste. And accreditation criteria for state-based programs were approved in August. Applications opened in September, and New Mexico Recycling Coalition, I'm proud to announce here for the first time anywhere in the world, is our first approved accredited program in the United States of America for the national standards for sustainable resource management, and they can provide this certificate of a certified professional sustainable resource management for people that participated in their training program over this past year. Rona, who developed this program, is now joining with the National Recycling Coalition, and the National Standards Certification Board will continue and be supported and support the National Recycling Coalition as part of its transition moving forward. So last information to share is there's lots of places to get information about zero waste. I'm doing a training in Philadelphia next week on Monday before the NRC board meeting on Tuesday. I'm coming in, and PROP, the Professional Recyclers Organization of Pennsylvania, has set up a zero waste training program with me as an instructor all day on the 18th. Hope some of you can join us there. It will count towards their training program accreditation if you're in Pennsylvania. And in February, there's a zero waste workshop in San Diego being organized by the Zero Waste San Diego and CRA chapter in San Diego, and the local technical advisory committee and citizens advisory committee. In the Bay Area in San Francisco, Zero Waste Week is happening for the second year. First time was last year and was an amazing event. This year it's happening March 16th through the 18th, 2014. SWANA is coming to California. The Road to Zero Waste is ending up in Monterey, March 24 to 25. And last but obviously not least, is for this audience, is the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council Conference in Atlanta, May 6 to 9, 2014. It'll be our biggest and best ever. We've got Laura Turner, who's one of the keynoters. General Motors just agreed to be a speaker. Got other great speakers being lined up. It's going to be a wonderful event, and hope to see many of you there. So now it's the time for questions, but before we go to those, I always end my presentations with the question, if you're not for zero waste, how much waste are you for? And let you ponder that. So Wayne, any last minute questions in our remaining time?
Yes, we have quite a few questions, Gary, but
Okay.
unfortunately we are running out of time. So I will give you a few questions, but what we can do, Gary, is we might be able to continue. We can record the Q&A offline and then tack that onto the edited webinar.
Great.
So we can do that at a later time. So we got time for a couple questions here. This one asks, what does the process for certification look like? What kind of reporting, and are there waste audits conducted?
There are audits. There is documentation requested for US Zero Waste Business Council. I'll speak to. If you go to the USZWBC website, uszwbc.org, and click on certification, all the forms and reporting requirements are clearly outlined there. Our intent was to try and make it simple but comprehensive. I think we achieved that. There's forms and reporting requirements there.
This one has, what is the estimated cost for certification?
The cost, interestingly, appears to be universally being done, from what I can gather, on a quote basis. There isn't a flat fee for the certifications, and for USZWBC, one of the first steps is providing a quote, giving some background on the size of the business and what type of facilities are being looked at. So there isn't a flat cost. It's done on a quote basis.
This question is concerning emissions. If zero emissions are claimed, how do you not count emissions from a recycling truck, for example?
On emissions, the emissions are defined by the goal in the definition of zero waste. The goal is zero air, water, and land emissions. In the diversion counting systems, it's hard to deal with that. In the and basically, what ZWIA did is said you comply with all state and federal permits in the ZWIA business recognition program. US Zero Waste Business Council has some points, particularly dealing with basic housekeeping type of issues to stop the runoff of plastics into the oceans and things of that nature. So good housekeeping practices are embodied in some of the credits, and proper treatment of hazardous materials on site are treated. In terms of the question about trade-offs between emissions of different types of facilities, the certification programs don't get into that. That's more life cycle analysis type of equations. Jeffrey Morris in Seattle, Sound Resource Management, that's in the best work in that realm. But it's not really part of the calculations of the certification programs that I've seen.
Okay, I think we're gonna cut it off right there. Again, I apologize for not being able to get all these questions answered, but we'll figure out a way to get them answered one way or another, either by email or by editing the webinar. So again, this webinar, like all the webinars in this series, has been recorded and will be made available via YouTube links on both the National Recycling Coalition and Recycling Market Center websites. Thank you to the audience for participating, and thank you, Gary, for the excellent presentation and answering those questions. And we hope you'll join us for next month's webinar, scheduled for Tuesday, December 17th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And have a great day.